mathematics. Most of us see this subject as being difficult, and it's something that students think they cannot pass. At the end of today, I will put some keys into your hand so that when you go back to your respective schools and share with other colleagues, you will see that mathematics is the simplest subject and the only subject that you can score 100%. Why? We don't mark English, we don't dot your I's, your T's, it's none of our business. Just do the calculation and get your point and we move ahead.
And then coming to WAEC and why students fell. In marking WAEC, we have three major areas which students already know. We have the summary, which is 30 marks. We have the comprehension. If you have gone through past questions, you have two comprehension passages. Each of them takes 20 marks. And then, of course, you have the writing. Now, when you come to the summary aspect, I would say that students, about 80% of the students score 0 over 30. I have a colleague here who marks English. I think he knows what I'm talking about. Most students don't summarize. Simply maybe because they don't understand the instructions, or even when they understand instructions, they fail to approach the questions right. And then, talking about summary, if you are someone who is already who reads a lot, the passage you're going to be given actually cannot be outside your level. Because most of the time, what WAEC does is to bring topical issues that are related to young people, things that you can easily relate to. But if you've not been reading, it's not going to be easy for you to understand such a passage.
The platform also gave participants the opportunity to ask relevant questions on the needed approaches towards mathematics and English language, and presentations of educational materials to the participants. Samuel Ba, GRTS.
We'll be back with news from outside the Gambia after this break. Welcome back. A day of national mourning has been declared in Chad as the authorities there held a memorial service for the 27 Chadian soldiers killed in northern Mali. President Idriss Deby, who decorated the fallen men, also informed his countrymen about the death of Abu Zaid, leader of Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb.
A memorial ceremony has been held for the 27 Chadian soldiers killed in the fighting in Mali. Brought back to the airport of N'Djamena, the soldiers were decorated posthumously by President Idriss Deby. A day of national mourning was decreed. Photos were broadcast on national television. President Deby said that the Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb leader Abu Zaid was killed during the fighting.
Since the beginning of this war, it is the first time that our soldiers have killed two important jihadi chiefs hiding in northern Mali, including Abu Zaid. Our soldiers have liberated Kidal, and together with French soldiers have also liberated Tessalit.
There has also been talk of a French aerial bombardment that killed Abu Zaid. The first announcement of his death came from Algeria. DNA tests are being done on members of his family to be compared with his traces. But in spite of the announcements, the Akim leader's death remains a mystery. Al-Qaeda has not confirmed the death. Some experts say it could be a strategy to lead Abu Zaid to make a mistake and expose himself. For the moment, Paris is saying nothing about his death. The French contingent of some 1,200 soldiers is continuing to hunt down radical jihadi fighters in the eastern Ifoghas high hills.
U.S. President Barack Obama has said that 750,000 jobs would be lost in the U.S. after sweeping budget cuts take effect in the country. White House insiders say the decision will deprive the federal government of $85 billion and billion more in the next 8 years. America's new defense secretary has warned that the move will have a huge effect on the military. We have details in the CFI report.
Sweeping budget cuts went into effect on Friday in the United States, depriving the federal government this year of $85 billion and more than $100 billion over the next 8. The cuts went into effect automatically, despite efforts to reach a last-minute deal with Republicans who have been calling for deep spending cuts in Washington. Mr. Obama said 750,000 jobs could be lost as a result.
At a time when our businesses have finally begun to get some traction, hiring new workers, bringing jobs back to America, we shouldn't be making a series of dumb, arbitrary cuts to things that businesses depend on and workers depend on, like education and research and infrastructure and defense.
More than half of the cuts will be to the defense budget, which will lose $46 billion. The new defense secretary warned that the cuts would have a significant impact on the military.
Let me make it clear that this uncertainty puts at risk our ability to effectively fulfill all of our missions.
To meet the reduced budget, the Air Force plans to slash 200,000 hours from the collective flight times of pilots, the Navy to reduce the number of days at sea, and some 800,000 civilian employees will be put on unpaid leave or have their working hours reduced. President Obama said he hoped Republicans would come to their senses about the cuts and the need to raise revenue. But Speaker of the House, John Boehner, was adamant. Let's make it clear, he said, the president got his tax hike on January 1st. The discussion about revenue is over.
The American people.
The president did say that although the cuts would not be catastrophic, they would be painful. But he had wanted at all costs to avoid a battle in Congress before March 27th, the date when Washington's spending authority runs out. Unless Congress passes a bill extending that authority, the government will shut down.
We now take our second break. Welcome back and over to sports now. Saturday saw a busy weekend of football in the Gambia as the national team Real de Banjul and Gamtel Football Club were all in action earlier this evening. The Scorpions were held to a disappointing goalless draw by Mauritania in the second friendly test match between the two countries. This after the Mauritanians won the first test match played on Wednesday by 2-0. In the other results, Real de Banjul defeated First Rabat of Morocco by 2-1 in the return leg of the CFA Champions League qualifiers. Captain Babakar Savage, second half brace, scored the Gambian champions a deserved 2-0 goal. But the result was not enough to qualify the City Boys to the next stage of the competition. Instead, it was the Moroccan side that goes through on away with goals ruled after 2 all aggregate scored. Elsewhere, Gamtel Football Club defeated Aslem the Dakar by 3-0. The telecommunication giants only needed a draw away in Dakar after a 2-0 in the first leg, but the FA Cup holders put 3 past the Senegalese side. Gamtel now go through to the next round of the CFA Confederation Cup with a comfortable 5-0 aggregate win. And before we go, a reminder of our headlines. Female candidates seeking to vie in the next month's local government elections in the Gambia have been assessing their chances days before the nomination of potential councillors. Banjul has played host to another meeting of regional and national coordinators of the project for sustainable management of endemic ruminant livestock in West Africa. Days after calling for more boots in northern Mali, Charles Idris Deby has presided over the memorial service for 27 of his troops killed in the multinational offensive against Islamic fighters, and President Barack Obama has warned Americans of the looming consequences of the massive budget cuts in Washington. That's all in this edition of the news. Thanks for joining us and do have a very pleasant day ahead.